Welcome back to Simply Sports Science for everything you need for IB Sports Science and GCSE PE. When we watch sport, we see objects flying through the air all the time. A football being kicked, a basketball shot, a javelin being thrown, or a long pass in rugby. All of these are examples of projectile motion. In sports science, a projectile is any object that is launched into the air and then moves under the influence of gravity and other forces. Once the object leaves the athlete's hand, foot, or equipment, the athlete no longer controls it. From that point on, its path through the air depends on a number of forces and factors. Understanding what affects the path of a projectile is really important in sports science because it explains how athletes maximize distance, height, and accuracy. So let's start with the most important concept here. The path of a projectile through the air is determined by different factors and forces. That means the flight of a ball, a shuttlecock, or a javelin is not random. It follows predictable patterns based on physics. The first major force acting on all projectiles is gravity. Gravity is the force that pulls objects downwards towards the earth. As soon as an object is released, gravity starts acting upon it. That is why every projectile eventually will fall back down to the ground. No matter how hard you throw or how hard you kick an object, gravity will always pull it downwards. So now let's talk about the initial velocity of the projectile. Initial velocity is the speed and direction at which the object is released. This is one of the most important factors affecting projectile motion. If the object is released at a higher speed, it will travel further. If it is released more slowly, it will not travel as far. This is why power is so important in sports like football, javelin, and long passing in rugby. Closely linked to this is the angle of projection. The angle of projection is the angle at which the object is released into the air. For maximum distance, the angle of projection is often close to 45 degrees, although in real sporting situations it's usually slightly lower due to air resistance and release height. If the angle is too low, the object does not stay in the air long enough. But if the angle is too high, the object goes up a long way, but not forward very far. So skilled athletes learn to adjust their angle of projection depending on the situation. Another important factor here is height of release. If a projectile is released from a higher point, it will stay in the air longer and therefore travel further. This is why taller athletes often have an advantage in sports like basketball and netball, where shots are released from above head height. It's also why javelin throwers try to release the javelin as high as possible. So far we've talked about factors controlled by the athlete. Now let's look at some of the forces acting during flight. One of these forces is air resistance, also known as drag. Air resistance is a force that opposes motion through the air. It acts in the opposite direction to the projectile's movement. Air resistance slows the projectile down and reduces the distance it will travel. The effect of air resistance depends on the speed of the object, the shape of the object, and the object's surface area. This is why a shuttlecock in badminton slows down much more quickly than a football. Another important force in some sports is lift. Lift is an upwards force created when air moves faster over one side of an object than the other. Lift helps keep an object in the air for longer. A clear sporting example is a football with backspin. The spinning ball causes air to move faster over the top than underneath, creating lift and allowing the ball to dip or float. Which brings us to the Magnus effect. The Magnus effect occurs when a spinning object moves through the air. The spin causes difference in air pressure around the object, making it curve or dip. This can be seen in a curling free kick in football, or a top spin shot in tennis, or a swinging cricket ball. The Magnus effect allows skilled players to control the path of a projectile, not just its distance. So now let's bring this together with some sport-specific examples. In football, the path of a ball depends on speed, angle of projection, spin, air resistance, and gravity. A powerful free kick with spin uses the Magnus effect to bend the ball around a defensive wall. In basketball, players adjust the angle of projection and height of release to increase accuracy when they're shooting. In javelin, athletes aim for a high release speed, as well as an optimal angle of projection and a stable flight to maximise the distance thrown. And in badminton, the shuttlecock experiences very high air resistance, causing steep drops and sharp changes in speed. One last very important point here. Once a projectile has been released, the athlete cannot change its path. All control happens before release through speed, angle, height, and spin. So to finish, let's summarise. The path of a projectile through the air is determined by gravity, by initial velocity, by angle of projection, by height of release, by air resistance, and by lift and spin. Understanding projectile motion helps explain performance in many sports and allows athletes to optimize technique for distance, accuracy, and control. And that is why projectile motion is such a key topic in biomechanics and forms such an important part of both GCSE PE and IB Sports Science. Thanks for watching Simply Sports Science. If you found this helpful, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our IB Sports Science content. We've got revision guides, exam tips and clear explanations to help you be successful. And don't forget to visit us at www.simplysportscience.co.uk. Join us again next time where we'll keep making sports science simple.